Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to welcome all of you in our Friday night virtual halaqa. And this is actually a defense of a research paper which students, Dr. Saleem Khanani and Brother Maseeh Soomro, have submitted. It's actually an embarrassing word to use a student for Dr. Saleem Khanani because he has been a student of knowledge for so many years, mashallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all beneficial knowledge. Ameen ya Rab. So before I can give them the mic and before I can introduce our guest and our external supervisor and external invigilator, I'll just tell you this entire process. First of all, just about this program, a few years ago, almost 2 years ago, when actually I joined the VIC community, alhamdulillah, this was the plan to start an academic program. And alhamdulillah, this 2-year evening program where we teach, not at the basic level, at an intermediate and advanced level of different flavors of Islamic sciences and academic, whether in terms of fiqh and in terms of the qawaid, in terms of the usul, just to quench the thirst of the community and those members and those brothers and sisters who are intellectual in community, and they were traveling in different parts of the nation to seek this knowledge. Few of my students personally, they went to Dallas to seek this knowledge. One of my students actually is right now in Egypt. So this course will going to quench the thirst for those intellectual brothers and sisters so that they can understand the academic side of the Islam also. And while offering this locally, alhamdulillah, we have just completed the first year of studies. And with the first year, this was part of their assignment, part of their completion of this course, that they have to submit a research paper. And alhamdulillah, I'm so blessed that we have got students like Dr. Saleem Khanani, extremely knowledgeable, and Brother Maseeh Soomro, who have submitted this paper on vaping, a very important, relevant issue, and the use of cannabis. And they were going to defend it right now. They will be presenting it. And then Shaikh Abdul Rehman, who as an external supervisor, as a teacher, not only for myself, but for the entire national US Muslim community, he was going to give his comments, and then we were going to have an open Q&A, inshallah. That's just basically introducing the topic. What does Islam say about e-cigarettes? What does Islam say about vaping and use of cannabis? And it has been such a big issue recently with our youth, with Muslim youth also. And I'm glad that, alhamdulillah, this have been a research topic, especially Dr. Saleem Khanani being a medical doctor. So he have covered that medical side also in his papers. I'm extremely proud as a teacher of what they have accomplished. With that, I will going to introduce the supervisor and the two panelists. I'm so happy, subhanallah, that my teacher, my muhsin, my murabbi, Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan, have joined us today, alhamdulillah. Before I can introduce him, let me say salam. Assalamu alaikum, Shaikhi.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, and it's wonderful to be part of this very momentous presentation on such an important topic, and I am also happy to hear your students' accomplishments. So,
it's your humbleness, Shaikhi. We are so much appreciative of you giving time to us, and may Allah accept from you. I just want to introduce Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan. He is a member of Islamic Circle of North America and the chairman of Islamic Circle of North America Shariah Council. He's a member of the Fiqh Council of North America. He's active in interfaith dialogue and Sharia councils. He's a graduate of Islamic University in Medina Munawwara in the faculty of Sharia. So who is a better person to invigilate this, subhanAllah, specializing in Islamic inheritance. And wallah, if you have any question for Islamic inheritance, there are very few people who have actually an expert, mashallah, and Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan is one of those, mashallah. He attended the university from 1982 to 1989 when some big names were there, subhanallah. And I'm so glad that, subhanallah, he is here with us today, inshallah. Now, Dr. Saleem Khanani, he doesn't need any introduction in Worcester community, mashallah, regular khatib for last so many years. He is a medical doctor and a graduate from one of the prestigious college in Pakistan, Dow Medical College. He's working right now as a physician. He's trained in Worcester, Massachusetts. and he lives with his family here in this community, and he's serving Muslim community of Worcester for such a long time. Similarly, Brother Maseeh Soomro, he is a BS in computer science, and he's extremely active in our newsletter team of Worcester. And mashallah, both of them are going to submit. They both of them are going to defend their research paper. So now, without any further delay, the agenda is that they were going to first present their paper, and then Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan will going to pose his comments. Yes, Dr. Saleem and Brother Maseeh Soomro, please start.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. So Assalamu alaikum, Ustaz Asif and Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan. It was my pleasure and honor to meet with Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan twice in this community. First, when he came for an interview to be an imam of this community, and second time when he came to give a lecture at one of the ICNA conferences. He almost became our imam. But I'm very glad to see him today.
You have someone better now.
Can you hear me correct? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So we'll start about this course first before we go on to the actual paper. That I don't know what Imam Asif saw in my face that he asked me to take this topic. And I can swear by Allah that I've never done any vaping or weeding, but I was happy to present this paper and to work on it. So when I joined this course and when I started to study for this topic, these were my thought processes. That the course was basically centered around principles of jurisprudence. And the things which came to my mind as I looked through the syllabus and the books which Imam Asif had provided, and I tried to correlate it with my own profession, where we talk about principles and practice of medicine. The principles are well established, both in medicine and in religious sciences. The practice changes according to the times and the place, based upon the principle, the divine text, and their interpretation by scholars. It also provides us an approach to solving new and contemporary issues by making use of the analogy, which is called qiyas, legal maxims, which are qawaidul faqiha, and objectives of Shariah, which is maqasid of Shariah. Given the limited amount of time that I have, I will not be going into the details of these things, but they are already in my paper. And if Shaikh Abdul Rehman or Imam Asif wanted, I can go into them as well. So how do we approach a new problem? And again, being a doctor, this is how I go through, and this is how I try to approach this problem from a religious perspective as well. So the first way will be to define the problem. Is there a problem? What are the roots of the problem? What is the magnitude of the problem? What are the harms of this problem, especially to our youth? Who are the targets or victims of this problem? What is the solution from the religious text through applying the principle of jurisprudence, which we studied in our last year? What are the barriers to the solution, and what are the practical aspects of solution, which I will call applied jurisprudence? So now, what is vaping? And before I try to define this thing, vaping was the COVID of 2019, and I'm saying it without exaggerating. The cases of vaping-related lung injury have not gone down, but unfortunately, human mind fluctuates, vacillates, oscillates so much that it focuses on one burning issue, while the other issues, which are no less important, are thrown at the back burner. So in 2019, vaping was the COVID, but once COVID became known and became like a raging fire, the issue of vaping is no longer being discussed, although the cases are on the increase, but they are not being reported. So what is vaping? It's the action or practice of inhaling and exhaling the vapor produced by an electronic cigarette or a similar device. An electronic cigarette, or e-cigarette as we call it commonly, is a handheld battery-powered vaporizer that simulates smoking and provides some of the behavioral aspects of smoking. The emphasis here is behavioral, and it includes the hand-to-mouth action of smoking, but without burning tobacco. Using an e-cigarette is known as vaping, and the user is referred to as a vapor. Now, instead of the cigarette smoke, the user inhales an aerosol, which is commonly called vapor. The e-cigarettes typically have a heating element, that atomizes a liquid solution called e-liquid. The e-cigarettes are automatically activated by taking a puff, and the others are turned on manually by pressing a button, which is similar to what we can call the hookah or shisha, although there is no button over there. Now, why e-cigarettes? Why did they come into existence? The intention was not bad if we look at it superficially, but as we see, we'll find out that there was a highly commercial incentive in introducing e-cigarettes. So in the United States, e-cigarettes were developed as an alternative to cigarette smoking, and some studies showed that vaping helped some smokers quit smoking or cut down substantially the number of cigarettes they smoked. But other studies show that e-cigarette users mostly keep smoking traditional cigarettes. Now we can say that innamal amalu bin niyat, but I was listening to a lecture from one of my teachers, Dr. Asrar Ahmad. He mentioned that innamal amal in the hadith, innamal amal, or the amal refers to good amal, not to bad amal. So you cannot say that my intention is good when the action is actually bad. Some historical fact, the first patent was granted to Joseph Robinson in 1930. He was you can say, the Qabil of this issue. The first commercially successful electronic cigarette was created in Beijing, China by Honlik, and it was first introduced in Europe in April of 2006. So 2006 was not too long ago, but we can see the magnitude of the problem in the last 14 years. So the number of vapers has increased steadily from 7 million in 2011. So in 5 years, from 2006 to 2011, there were 7 million cases. But if you look from 2011 to 2018, in 7 years, the number jumped sixfold, 41 million. These figures are from 2018. I don't know the recent figures. As I mentioned, with the COVID pandemic, everybody has now focused on one issue and not paying much attention to what's going on. The global market is estimated to be worth 19.5 billion, and I'm sure it's crossed 25 billion now. The use of e-cigarettes among high school students, that's the target population. So among the high school students, this has increased at an alarming pace, jumping by 78% from 2000 to 2018 among the high school students, and by 48% among those attending middle school. The stock market has not jumped as much. So the use of e-cigarettes among teens, if we say that teens are more likely to use e-cigarettes than cigarettes, and twice as many boys use e-cigarettes as girls. And if you look at the figure here, diagram, the use increases as they move from 8th grade to 10th grade to 12th grade. The e-cigarette users are also more likely to start smoking, which contradicts what was initially felt, that e-cigarette is a safe alternative to cigarette smoking, and perhaps people who use e-cigarettes will not smoke. But unfortunately, this is not proven to be true. Now, the teen mind doesn't really realize what is in the e-cigarettes. Two-thirds think that it's just flavoring, which means it's not going to harm us. But unfortunately, this is not the case. The impact of advertising. The advertising agency is perhaps the smartest agency in the world. They know who to target. So they have very cost-effective means of targeting the population which is more likely to buy into it. So 7 in 10 ads are actually targeting the high teens. And I've given some figures which I will not go into the detail again because of the limited time. So what's wrong with vaping? What kind of harm does it produce? And a new disease came on the horizon last year, 2019, and this year it is COVID. So the EVALI is the name given to vaping-related illness, or the e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. We doctors like to use acronyms, small words, just like the Qawaidul Faqiha, where you can use a short statement, but it contains a very comprehensive statement. So the characteristics of this disease, and I was reading just before presenting this, some of the symptoms are actually very similar to COVID. And these symptoms include respiratory symptoms such as cough, chest pain, shortness of breath, gastrointestinal symptoms such as abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. And one thing which is not in my presentation is that in California, I think a few months ago, the health department over there issued that anybody who presents with EVALI-like symptoms must be tested for COVID, because it could be COVID as well. By the end of October of 2019, when we were finishing our principles of jurisprudence, there were more than 1,000 cases of lung injury and at least 37 deaths. And according to CDC, 1,888 patients have developed this new lung disease, except in the state of Alaska. And I was just looking at it, the number in February had jumped to 2,800. So between October and February, 1,000 more cases were reported. And since then, it's quiet on all the front. So what do the lungs look like? And if you just look at the healthy lung looks pink, the smoker's lung look like it's a burnt, charcoal burnt lung. And this is what the lungs look like in this condition as well. They are burnt beyond repair, you can say. The only treatment would be lung transplant. Now, what is weed and what's the connection between the vaping and the weed? They are two monsters. You can call them their sisters, because those who use e-cigarettes are also more likely to use the weed. And weed is not something new. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah actually has a fatwa on hashish, and this has been used from times immemorial. So weed is cannabis or marijuana, which is a psychoactive drug obtained from the cannabis plant, and it is used for both medical and recreational purposes. So again, the intention can be good that we are using it for medical purposes, but the misuse tells us a different story. So marijuana is also known by several names such as weed, herb, pod, grass, bud, ganja, Mary Jane, and among others. And it's a greenish-gray mixture of the dried flowers of the plant Cannabis sativa. Now, what does the word psychoactive mean? And I think this is an important description, because this description is a description of what is mentioned in the hadith as muskir or khamr. So a psychoactive drug or psychopharmaceutical or psychotropic drug is a chemical substance that changes the brain function. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a brain to distinguish us from animals. But unfortunately, such compounds changes our brain function, which means they result in alteration in our perception of reality, our mood, our consciousness, our cognition, and our behavior. So these substances may be used medically, recreationally, to purposefully improve one's performance or to alter one's consciousness as entheogens for ritual, spiritual, shamanic purposes, or for research. So the uses can be many. The uses can be, you can call, they are for the good of the mankind. But unfortunately, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِسْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. So this is where we are. Now, I will not go into the chemical detail of the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the actual ingredient of cannabis, which actually causes all the side effects which I have mentioned. But at the bottom, I've mentioned that in addition to what we have discussed, in some cases, THC can also cause elation, anxiety, tachycardia, which means the heart is beating too fast, short-term memory recall, sedation, relaxation, pain relief, and many more. So since 2012, and these figures are from the last year, 11 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized the recreational use of cannabis for adults over the age of 21. And its medical use is legal in 33 other states, including the state of Massachusetts, including my hometown of Shrewsbury. And marijuana is the most commonly used drug among the teens, with more teenage girls reporting the use of marijuana compared with cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, and all other illicit drugs combined. The emphasis here is combined. In 2017, the legal marijuana industry, only the legal, we are not talking about under the table transaction. So the legal economic impact in the USA was between 20 billion and 23 billion. And cannabis can be used in various ways through inhalation, ingestion, topical application, through the hookah, shisha, and so many other ways. As I mentioned, Vapes and Weeds go together. And people who died as a result of this lung disease, EVALI, often used products exclusively containing THC. And last year, there was a case of a 39-year-old woman who was found dead in New Orleans after vaping, but from an overdose of THC oil. And this was the first death reported from THC. And since then, we haven't heard much about it. Now, when we look at this issue, from a medical issue, you can simply say that if something causes more harm than benefit, the Federal Drug Agency, we call it FDA, will not approve. So if this was a drug to be used, and it went through medical research and medical trials, most likely the FDA will not approve its use. So as a medical doctor, I can say it's not good. We shouldn't be using it. But here we are a student of religion, and we can be asked this question: what does your religion have to say about this issue? And this is where we have to look at the text, the divine text, which is the Quran and the Hadith. And afterwards, we have to look at the consensus of Sahaba, the Ijma of Sahaba, the Ijma of the scholars of the past, and also the Ijma of the scholars of today. As Quran mentioned, First, alu ala dhikra in kuntum la ta'lamun. So for people like me who do not know, we have to approach our Islamic scholars or the books before making our own judgment. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Hujurat has mentioned, Ya allazina amanu la tuqaddimu baina yadillahi wa rasulih. We should not put our opinion, even though I'm a doctor, but when it comes to religious issue, I should not put my opinion before knowing what our religion has to say. So this issue falls under the category of fiqhul nawazil, but in a way, it's not really fiqhul nawazil. It's not a new issue because even Imam Ibn Taymiyyah was asked this question with regards to hashish. So we have to look at the Quran, the traditions reported from the Holy Prophet ﷺ. We have to use analogical reasoning or qiyas. We have to look at the consensus of Islamic scholars, and we have to use the legal maxims. Actually, this is all that we learned in our last year's classes. So I tried to kind of weave this into the fabric of my talk. So now the evidence comes from a very famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ sent Muaz to Yemen and he asked him, how will you make a decision when you are presented with a case? And he said, have a look at the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ then asked him, what if you don't find it in the book of Allah? He said, then I will look at the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And then the next question, the most important question was, what if you don't find it even in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ or in the book of Allah? And here he said, ajtahidu rai wala alu, that I will exert my opinion. The rai here doesn't mean that he will sit on a couch puffing on his hookah and say, I think this is what it is. This was a faqih among the Sahaba. He was trained by the Prophet ﷺ. So when he's saying ijtihad from Bab Ifti'al is not mere opinion. It's you have to study a lot, you have to think a lot before you open your mouth. And he said, Wala alu, that I will not leave any stone unturned. And it made the Prophet ﷺ so happy that he touched on his chest and he said, Alhamdulillah, ladhi waffaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lama yurdi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, just as an aside, I will mention that according to Imam Albani, this is a da'if hadith, but I will not go into the differences and can we use this hadith because that will be one of the topics in our next semester when we'll be studying the hadith, inshallah. So now, as I mentioned, that this compound is psychoactive, and in Islamic Sharia, we have been using the term intoxicant or khamr or muskir. So it's very similar. So an intoxicant is something that causes its user to lose control of either the entire body or some body organs. Linguistically, an intoxicant is something that causes someone to lose control of their faculties or behavior. And it's very similar to the definition that I provided for a psychoactive compound. So first we look at the evidence from the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, yes, alunaka anil khamri wal maisir. Qul fihima ismun kabirun wa manafi'u linnas wa ismuha uma kabirun min naf'ihima. They ask you, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the intoxicant. Now the word khamr linguistically means covering. And more specifically, it will mean something which covers a person's intellect. And it is intellect, our brain, the faculty of brain, that distinguish human beings from animals. So if our intellect, our brain is covered, we are no better than animals. So they ask you about intoxicant and games, which means gambling. Say in both there is great evil as well as some benefit for man, but the evil which they cause is greater than the benefit which they bring. So this actually becomes one of the legal maxims, as we shall see, inshallah. The hadith that I will mention only a few. Wa kullu muskirin haram. Every intoxicant is prohibited. And the word kul in the terminology of fiqh means it is all inclusive. There is no exception over here, except under some very specific circumstances. So this hadith is narrated by Imam Bukhari, so obviously this is a Sahih hadith. And another hadith narrated by Abu Dawud, but it is also mentioned in Tirmidhi that ma askara kasiro faqalilahu haram. If consumption of a little quantity of what intoxicates in a large quantity is prohibited as well. So if a large quantity is intoxicating, then using it in a small amount is also prohibited because one thing leads to another. So the legal maxim that comes from these Quranic verses is ad-dararu yuzal, that whatever is harmful has to be counteracted, it has to be removed. So the injurious effect to various body organs and not just the intellect provides an analogy from the Quranic text, wala tulqu bi aydikum ila tahlukate. And subhanallah, the word bi aydikum, with your own hands. So e-cigarette is a handheld device. So people are destroying themselves, they are throwing themselves with their own hands into destruction. So I think that here there is a very clear-cut correlation between this verse and the handheld devices, where people use their own hands to destroy themselves. So the applied knowledge of this verse is body and intellect have to be protected. Our life is a trust, is an amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are required, as the Maqasid al-Sharia mention, our life, our soul, our intellect, our lineage, our property. And if our mind is covered, we are not able to protect any of these things. And self-destruction by any means, including suicide, is not allowed in Islam. Now, I also wanted to talk about the Jamaliyat or the Islamic aesthetic sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاكُمْ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. So my focus here is on al-khaba'is. That this is the Islamic aesthetic sense. A person who is smoking, it doesn't look good, it doesn't smell good. Nobody really wants to sit in his company. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that these are the responsibilities of the Prophet ﷺ, who will enjoin upon them the doing of what is right and forbid them the doing of what is wrong, and make lawful to them the good things of life and forbid them the al-khaba'is, the bad things. And the definition of al-khaba'is given from Tafsir al-Wajiz is تَسْتَخْبِسُ اتِّبَاعُ السَّلِيمَ وَتَنْفِرُ مِنْهُ. It is something that a person of aesthetic sense will try to run away. He will not consider it something to be desirable, something to be good for himself, or to be in the company of somebody who is engaged in this action. Now, the object of Islamic law we have discussed, when one of them is protection of intellect. So now we are looking at what our scholars have mentioned. So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmahullah states that everything that impairs intellect is forbidden, even if it does not produce physical enhancement and pleasure. Impairment of intellect is forbidden by the consensus of scholars. So we have the ijma of ulama. And majority of scholars consider consumption of intoxicants that impair intellect, even if it does not produce extreme pleasure that is produced by liquid intoxicants. So whether the compound is liquid or other, it doesn't matter. It's the kafiyat, it's the effect which it produces and not the form. So I'm just quoting from the fatwa of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. The hashish is one of those things which Allah and His Messenger ﷺ have prohibited. And he said that the prohibition is from the categories of alcohol and intoxicant in name and meaning. And the ahadith on the matter are many. The Messenger of ﷺ with his Jawami al-Kalim has referred to every single substance. It's the definition of kul, which impairs the ability to think and intoxicates, and it did not differentiate between the form they may take or whether they are eaten or drunk. So I think this is a very important point which Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, who was a man of vision, made even at that time, that it's not just of one form of hashish. If it's turned into any other form, and if its effect still remains the same, it will still be prohibited, because the Messenger of ﷺ used the word kul, which means any form or every form of it. So that's why the emphasis is on kul. Now, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, commenting on the statement of the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith in Sahih Muslim, every intoxicant is khamr and every khamr is forbidden. So Imam Ibn Rajab Hanbali mentions, and I want to say what I heard from one of my scholars. Ibn Rajab also started writing a commentary of Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari. Unfortunately, he died early and he was not able to complete it. But the sheikh from whom I studied Bukhari, he mentioned that if Ibn Rajab had survived, lived long enough to complete, his commentary of Bukhari will be better than Fathul Bari, and Allah knows best. So he says, an intoxicant brings about pleasure and joy. A group of the scholars said this does not matter, whether it is a solid or a liquid, whether it is eaten or drunk, whether it comes from a seed or a date or from milk or whatever. That is why hashish, resin made from the leaves of the cannabis plant, was included, as well as other substances which are consumed because of the pleasure they induce and because of the intoxicating effect. So this ties with the different forms of the cannabis which are being used. In fact, there are now gums which contain cannabis. One company actually started to produce pizza in which they are putting this cannabis for the added pleasure. Ma'azallah, summa ma'azallah.
Dr. Saleem?
Can I stop?
Just inshallah, you have 2 more minutes, inshallah. Okay.
Okay. So just, there are some benefits of this compound. And I, being a medical doctor, a cancer doctor, also use it. So the medical uses include pain, nausea, muscle spasms, anxiety, low appetite, sleep problem, autism, epilepsy. And here we have this ayah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which actually mentioned that if something is haram, but if there is no alternative available, if a person is in a state of istirar, extreme dire need, then in that case, that substance can be made lawful for him so long as he uses it only in quantity which can relieve this problem and he does not become habituated to it. So again, such compounds have to be prescribed by a medical doctor, a medical professional, in an amount which will produce benefit without producing harm while monitoring the patient. So the legal maxim that we use is ad-daruratu tabiul mahdurat. Necessities make the prohibited permissible, and this applies according to the stronger position to the area of medicine. So if it's a medical necessity, if a patient is suffering towards the end of life and there is no other alternative, then in this situation, such compounds can be used. And I just mentioned that hookah, unfortunately, our youth don't think that this is bad, but actually this is much more harmful than cigarette smoking. And people who are using hookah, they can also develop cancer of the mouth, cancer of the lungs, stomach cancer, other cancers, reduce lung function. And I think one thing which might appeal to them is decreased fertility. Their chances of having a child also go down. So I will stop here, and may Allah forgive me if I made any mistake. This is not a fatwa. I'm not qualified to give a fatwa. We just studied this topic from the Islamic perspective, utilizing the knowledge that we learned from Sheikh Asif's classes last year and the books that we read. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولذكر الله أكبر.
Jazakallah khairan for presenting a research paper, mashallah. I'm really proud of you, mashallah, both of you, that I have an honor of teaching you, mashallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept both of your efforts, inshallah. Now I will actually hand over to Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan to give his comment, inshallah.
Okay,
Yes,
just a few seconds before Sheikh asked this question, that Brother Maseeh Soomro, although he has been quiet, he's not the lesser partner in it. Just like Musa alayhi salatu wasalam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Waj'al akhi Haruna wazira. So he was my wazir more than my wazir.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan. Yes, Shaikh Abdul Rehman Khan. Sheikh, you're mute, I guess. Yes, now it's fine.
Yeah, alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulullah amma ba'd. I still feel that if it is a joint paper, then we also need to know from Brother Maseeh what some dimensions of this paper that should come from you as well. So this is two persons that have done a research, and I would like to hear something from you as a student of this research. So if you can spend some few minutes talking about your take on the paper and the topic.
I couldn't hear him very clearly.
Sheikh,
Go ahead.
No, I didn't understand the question very well. I couldn't hear him very well.
Brother Saleem, Dr. Saleem, Sheikh is saying that he want to hear something from Brother Maseeh before he can give his comments also.
Sure.
So Brother Maseeh, inshallah, please. Just within 1 or 2 minutes, inshallah, because we have less time now.
This was basically Saleem Bhai's effort in writing this paper. My contribution was in formatting the document. As far as what I would say about the paper is I agree with it. Whatever Brother Saleem has put in this document, in this paper, and if I had even contributed in writing this paper, I wouldn't have done even a part of the what Brother Saleem has written. So I know this is a joint paper, but there was no requirement that like has to be 50-50 or, something like this. My contribution was formatting the document.
Okay, because when I see two names, I would expect that both of you would have had equal opportunity to research and to do presentations. So you were just doing the formatting of the document, correct?
Correct. But I'm glad that Imam Asif selected me to team up with Brother Saleem, and it's his effort that we were able to submit this paper. But I told Imam Asif that my contribution is very little.
Okay, so intellectually, you have done very little to contribute to the paper, but technically, you helped out. Do I have it
Correct.
right? Yeah,
Correct.
okay. Okay. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I just wanted to know, uh, those backgrounds, what you have done. So, obviously, it's a very relevant issue in our society, and we all agree on that for sure. And there needs to be a lot of awareness that we should take this topic and somehow address it on the member through research papers like this and further research paper, um, fatwa councils, and as much as we can uh, make it known to our youths, as the statistics are showing that more and more young people are using it, that we this is a topic that I'm glad that somebody did uh, you know try to crack code. Yes, yeah. Can you hear me good now? Can you hear me better? Okay. And so you have pointed out that there are a number of ill effects, and those ill effects are many, and scientifically, um, you have given some statistics which prove the the innate nature of this vaping and how it can affect the human being. Um, I like the point that you say that while vaping is less harmful than smoking, still it is not safe. That's something that should be brought out. And the medical effects of vaping need to be highlighted so that people know that what you're dealing with this drug is something that can raise your blood pressure, that can spike your adrenaline, your heart rate, and so forth, and leaving you to uh, having a heart attack. And لا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما, that do not kill yourself. This is the basic of when we are looking at dangerous substances. We look at the effect that it comes to the human life, the human health of the person, and what society ill effects that it can have in society. Um, I would have liked you to add in your paper some of the comments you have made here. Your comments seem to be more elaborate than what you're presenting in the paper, which I'll come to when I ask you some questions. But you made some points in your presentation that were not there in the paper. So normally your paper has to be having those information. It will be helpful. The addictiveness of these drugs is something that you need to talk about as we are dealing with the Sharia aspect of it. And the addictiveness is really what causes Sharia to put a seal to say haram, haram. Because addictiveness is actually ubudiyah. You become enslaved to that thing. When the word addicted means you have become enslaved. And the only enslavement is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So maybe if you're going to add somewhere in your paper later on, if you're going to edit it and with your wonderful teacher, Sheikh Asif, I think you can add that ubudiyah is only for Allah. So this vaping and all of these things, when they come in the category of ubudiyah, they should not be a second opinion about them because of their addictive nature. I think that's the most important thing. Then all the other things that have come that you mentioned medically and so forth. And similarly, the case of legalizing marijuana. I know you keep saying marijuana, marijuana, but the English pronunciation is marijuana. Marijuana. The J is like a silent word. You mentioned the TCH, the intoxicating effect of TCH. But marijuana, the herb itself, has two components. One is the THC, which you mentioned about, but there's a CBD that is not intoxicating. And it is amazing how the THC is psychoactive, but the CBD is non-psychoactive. And they have about the same structure. So I think that needs to be highlighted because that also will come under this, as you bring it up in the marijuana, it should be noted that now more and more CBD is becoming a norm because of the non-psychoactive compound that it has, as opposed to the THC, which is the thing that takes you high. Okay? It takes you high and makes you fly. That's where the problem comes in. So the CBD is very much tolerated. And those states that have banned the marijuana, they still allow CBD oil and CBD products to be sold because of its non-psychoactive effect that it has. Okay. The paper itself, I read it, and as you're going through, I had a big problem with the structure of the paper. When you present a paper, your introduction should take maybe 1 page. You present the problem, and then you have headings and subheadings as you go along. This was like reading into one, you're thrown in an ocean and you're given all the information there. That's not how I would like to see the paper. So if you are going to edit it back, try to make your introduction not more than 1.5 pages. And for each section, you have a heading that would give the reader what are you talking about in this paragraph, 3-4 paragraphs. Close it off and then start back anew. And you had enough things to information to categorize them. Okay, so you need to look back at your paper and basically put them into a heading, topics, subtopics, and so forth, and it will make it a lot more readable. So if a person stops somewhere, you would have closed off your thought process on that. There was no need to explain the full details of Maqasid al-Shariah or Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya in a simple paper like this. I know you studied it, so you want to showcase that you have done. It's like I ask you, the Maseeh, Dr. Saleem. It is like I ask you for, tell me how you go from Massachusetts to New York, and you give me the whole map of America and tell me don't use these roads, you don't use roads, and so forth and so on. When you're doing a paper like this, you don't need all the maqasid of Sharia. You need to identify the main one, which is about life, that you highlight and talk about that. So there seems to be a lot, as I said, you need to connect the science of what you're saying with some of the Sharia points and the Sharia concept. So if I have to ask you a question, it will be, why did you make this whole introduction flow down to such an extent and actually flow into the paper? What was the reason for doing that? Go ahead.
Dr. Saleem, you are mute, I guess. Dr. Saleem, you are mute, I guess. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Saleem? It's still you're mute, Dr. Saleem. Munib, can you unmute Dr. Saleem? Yes, now we can hear you, Dr. Saleem.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you
Yes,
now. Dr. Saleem, please go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes,
we can
yes,
hear
yes,
you. We can hear you.
No? You can hear me? Okay. So Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh, for your input. And these are very helpful, very important points. And inshallah, we'll rewrite the paper, inshallah. Now, when I wrote this paper, it was not written to pass an examination, number one. Number two, it was not written just for Muslims only. My idea was that if a non-Muslim is reading the paper, he needs to have a background. So when we talk about maqasid al-Sharia or we talk about the legal maxims, I should define these terms and discuss them in some detail. So the person who is not knowledgeable about Islam at all will be able to get the flavor. That's the reason why I did it.
So you are saying that this paper was not to pass an exam. I would assume that this paper was to complete a particular course outline, and you should have mentioned that if this is going to be your studies, that somewhere you should have mentioned that this is meant for a broader readership,
right?
So that whoever is going to read it from even a non-Muslim perspective, they can benefit. I've not seen that. I understand this is a paper to present for an evaluation, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it is presented for an evaluation, then you have to make sure that that is in the back of your mind.
Sure.
I don't see anywhere that you have mentioned that this is for a wide public. I've seen that you did mention from the American statistics and the field of science, which we normally do. Even in our khutbah, we would do that. That does not mean that it is open for non-Muslims. So you can, if that's what you want to do, and you can mention that somewhere, and this is also for non-Muslim readers. And you don't need to make, if you're going to give them maqasid of Sharia, you just give them in 2 sentences what is maqasid of Sharia. That these are the 5 points or the maxims of Sharia, the purpose of Sharia, and the application of that Sharia in what is known as so. But I would say keep it to the Muslim audience for now, because it's a topic that we need, the Muslim community would need to have more of that. Also, the evidences need to, if you are writing this topic, and this is what you found about the harmful effects of vaping, the intoxicating effect of vaping, what you could have done was to more give the qiyas in a little more details. And what the qiyas does, it breaks down the connection between what intoxicates you and this thing called vaping, and anything, whether the THC or any other substance, as you said, chewable, edible, or drinkable. So you can connect the illah, that was gel these 2 things and make it, and so your conclusion would have been a lot easier if you had taken the qiyas approach. It would have been a lot easier to make your point clear. So if you're going to redo this paper somewhere along the line, if I were you, just draw a diagram, and you have in qiyas, you have the hukum, the far, the illa, and the 4th one, four points that will make this very conclusive, that this thing that I have studied called vaping is very bad for your health, very bad for your life. And here are the 4 different areas that you're connecting the hukum of what intoxicate you in large quantity, small quantity is also haram. And I would conclude to say this is haram because 1, 2, 3, 4. And you go into that, it will be a lot more conclusive. So you would have concluded your paper, and whoever is reading, then they have to prove otherwise. You're giving them a final verdict from your research. They want to come and prove it, disprove it. Well, that's what it is all about. But my research, like you're concluding that my research after reading this scientifically, this is what I have concluded. And it would make it a lot easier for a reader. I had difficulty, again, you send me down like a slope with all these dalil, with all these opinion, and then where do I stop? Where do I hear your voice? I hear Imam Shatibi, I hear Imam Taymiyyah, I hear this and that. Even in your presentation, I hear that you're sending me down a steep, over here we have a fall called Sliding Falls. It's a waterfall, you sit on it and it's a big rock, it slides you, the water slides you down. So you don't know to swim out, you drown. So I don't want that to happen. And before I conclude, I must say that you have taken on a very good topic. I think you have a lot of information. It is how you structure your information and how you would conclude very convincingly, because this is what papers are all about. And may Allah bless you. And I really admire your courage to sit in front of two sheikhs and make your presentation. And you
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I want to say something about the conclusion. And I debated whether I should say conclusively that this is haram, knowing my own limitation, that I'm not a scholar to give a fatwa.
Correct.
Will it sound like a fatwa, or should I leave it just open for the reader?
No, it does not. All you would have said is based on my research, and you're limiting now to your research.
Okay.
Based on my research, I find that this, and if you would have focused on the qiyas issue, it would have been easier for you to come to that conclusion. Okay. So if you need to redo the paper, just bring in the qiyas, make your conclusion. Somebody else can come and say, well, here, your paper is trash. This is what this academia is all about. You trash one another's paper till the truth comes out of all of this. But based on your research, based on your limited knowledge, based on what you have come out, this is my conclusion. You should have made a conclusion there, okay?
Jazakallah. Jazakallah.
Okay,
good to see you again, Sheikh. Good to see you again.
Okay, thank you. I may have seen, I can't recognize your face.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if I come back to WIC, and now Inshallah. You have an imam that is pleasing, very pleasing to me, that you have one that I'm very happy with. So
thank you.
And it is the qadr of Allah that I do not go there, and I'm glad I did not.
Sheikh, this is based on your wisdom. You are saying this, right? No, we still love you, Sheikh. We still love you.
Okay.
And hopefully, inshallah, once things will get better, you can come and spend the weekend and teach some of those things that you know, Sheikh, to entire community, inshallah.
I would like to do inheritance. I would like to do Islamic inheritance.
Oh, we would love to have you. Our students of Fiqh will be, inshallah, getting ready within 3-4 months to study that, inshallah, Sheikh. We'd love to have for a weekend workshop, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan. And Brother Saleem and Brother Maseeh, it was amazing presentation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. I'm pretty sure you have taken notes of what Sheikh told you. Inshallah, before our plan, Sheikh, is to actually publish this, inshallah, after noting your observation, mulahazat. And inshallah, we'll publish it by the end of this year, inshallah.
It will be good. It will be very good. I like it, but there's a lot of rough edges there that you have to, and the conclusion is important.
So, Sheikh, if I understood from you, the content-wise, it's good, but the paper have to get more organized.
It has to be organized, and their conclusion has to be there. Less information on the maqasid, and more on qiyas, because now you're using, and you will put what the hukum is for the asl, the asl, the far, the hukum, and the illah. Those are the 4 things. And if you do a little research, you will find that they connect up, and based on that, you conclude that this thing has that haram effect, and therefore you conclude that based on my research that this thing is haram.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikhana. And hopefully, inshallah, once we'll have a graduation after 2 years of program, Sheikh, you will, inshallah, going to come with your family, inshallah, hopefully, Sheikh.
Inshallah.
But Jazakumullah. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, Shaikh Abdul Rehman, and Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Saleem and Brother Maseeh, for presenting the research paper, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you immensely, inshallah. And I will see you all, those who have joined us online, inshallah, next week, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.